You have my consent.
Oh, that's great. I got a spinning wheel on my recording button up here, but I think it'll tell us once we start recording.
I've got a recording in the upper left on my end.
Oh, does it say recording?
Yeah.
Oh, nice. I wonder if we're going. Well, oh, okay. Now mine just turned red and it says that I'm recording. So,
Oh, good.
I guess that's one of those first things that we just got to figure out. So,
Yeah.
All right. I guess I don't know what to say to get started here, but Tanner Neubauer is our first guest in the health careers class. And this is our virtual experience, I guess. And I've got a list of questions for Tanner that I did have some student contribution from with the one student, Kendall Cox, that I had on our first hour A day. So Tanner, thanks for joining us. I think I'm going to start with a chat pack question. So I don't know if you've ever seen these before, but they're real simple, kind of fun question starters to get us talking a little bit.
Awesome.
And the question says, what is one item you own that has virtually no value, but has such sentimental value that you wouldn't even sell it for $1,000?
Ooh, that is a good question. And man, that is a thumper. There's definitely a lot of stuff that I have that holds very little value or no value. I tend to kind of bounce back and forth between being a hoarder of things that have no value, and then like I'll wake up on one day and I'll just instantly purge stuff. But I would say that I am. This is like the Kim Neubauer thing. My mom, when we were growing up, she would never throw away like batteries. So she always was just concerned about, she didn't know whether you could recycle them or throw them in the trash. And she didn't want to break the rules, so we would just keep this box of dead batteries. So on that note, in my car right now, I have 3 empty ink cartridges on the very same concept. I don't know what to do with empty printer ink cartridges. So maybe not so much on the sentimental value, other than that every time I see it, I think about that box of dead batteries and then via my mom.
Yeah, well, that's sentiment right there for sure. That's sentiment.
Yeah.
So something that's probably a little bit more relatable to what we're doing here. The first thing on our list says, introduce yourself, tell us who you are, and then give us some educational background and starting in high school, which I think I told the kids that you're an alumni. So it's the first job interview question. Tell us about yourself. What do you do? What's your educational background, and how'd you get to where you are?
Yeah, perfect. So my name is Tanner Neubauer, and I am a 2011 Princeton High School graduate. Currently, I am the chief operating officer of a medical clinic in St. Louis, or a suburb of St. Louis, called Catalyst Pain Management Restorative Treatment Center. My career path and educational path is a pretty unique one, as most are that you end up talking to. But after I graduated from Princeton, I went to college in Madison at the University of Wisconsin. From there, I kind of bounced. I guess my very first year of college, which most people watching this probably will have a similar experience. One week I was this major, the next week I was, well, let's just say the first week I was actually a business major. Then I decided I didn't want anything to do with business. The second week I was a music education major. The third week I was there was something else in there. And eventually I stumbled into going into exercise science. So my bachelor's degree is in a field of study called kinesiology, which is a very kind of, I think, up and coming and becoming a more relevant degree, because it really, and in my case, it certainly did, it set me up for a nice career in healthcare. But also it was diverse enough where in my life, I've been a personal trainer. I've worked with athletes. I've worked in medical clinics. So it kind of prepped me for any amount of those things. after I graduated in 2015 from the University of Wisconsin, my thought was I eventually wanted to go on and become a physical therapist, but I just wasn't ready to take on another round of schooling. I either wanted a break or I wanted to see what was out there. Just what could I do with just a bachelor's degree? So I got my certification in strength and conditioning, and it was looking for jobs in the field of either athletics, um, again, strength and conditioning, personal training, that type of thing. And I got hired. I was applying for all sorts of jobs that I was really not qualified for in any way, shape, or form, um, including, cardiac rehab jobs. I remember filling out the application to be like the assistant strength and conditioning coach for. It was a professional sports team, and it was so odd. It was very random. I think it was like the Pittsburgh Steelers or something. So I in no way met the qualifications for it, but I applied for it anyway, just to say, hey, what the heck? Weirder things have happened.
Yeah, you got to put your line in the water.
Exactly. Yeah, 100% of the shots you don't take, right? You always miss them. So eventually I found myself, I was really, really shooting for this ideal job, and ended up having to more so take a job. And that actually brought me back from Madison to St. Cloud, or Princeton. And I got hired at a company called Rejuve Medical, and that's where my career started. So I'll kind of stop there. I'm imagining that you're going to ask maybe more questions on career, because I can dive into career too if we want to get there. But that's who I am. That's where I've been, and my educational background.
Yeah, I guess just a quick follow-up question is, what kind of education or training went into your strength training certificate? Did you have more coursework? Was it just an exam?
Yeah,
Can
yeah,
you
good
talk about
question.
that?
It's interesting in the fitness industry right now, and this will we're seeing kind of a little bit of a paradigm shift, but any of the kids like in the class potentially watching this could get a fitness certification over the course of a weekend, and be quote unquote qualified to teach a class. And I say that with no arrogance by any means, or really throwing shade. But the fitness industry used to be kind of the wild, wild west, where we had strength coaches that were just the guys that maybe played a little bit of high school football, where we had personal trainers that were just people that knew how to work out. And that's what I'm so passionate about, especially specifically relating to fitness, is now we've all kind of come together as an industry, and we're starting to more formalize what our educational standards are for practicing, meaning practicing in the field professionally. So my certification in particular, well, let's just start with this. Your certification can span um, multiple different either populations. So let's say client populations, from geriatrics to youth, to people that maybe want to lose weight, to people with pre-existing conditions, to athletes. So my certification is specifically with athletes. It's a CSCS certification, Certified Strength and Conditioning Specialist. The requirements on that is a bachelor's degree, and then I believe it's 200 hours worth of field work, supervised field work, and then an eventual certification exam. So there was a written exam and then a practical, like hands-on exam, which actually was done with videos, so it wasn't really hands-on at all. And then I've got continuing education requirements over the course of 3 years. I need to do something to the effect of about 30 to 35 hours of continuing education credits.
Okay, so you still have that certification?
I do, yeah. I have maintained that.
I guess I'm just starting to think of some clarifying questions here, but you said, you kind of made it sound like there wasn't a whole lot of rigor involved in becoming a personal trainer, but then I heard you list off all the things that you have, like a bachelor's degree and all this training. So, so you could technically be a personal trainer without having a certification. Is that kind of what I would understand?
So, and the point of bringing that up, and you're exactly right. You can get your weekend certification and be a personal trainer, and this is where the fitness industry is going, which is a good thing. Is we're actually trying to get away from that a little bit. Where
Okay.
now certifications are starting to require bachelor's degrees or some sort of specialty advanced training or a significant amount of field and coursework because there's a handful of different reasons. Is number one, when we're working with a special population that might either have a congenital condition, i.e., they have potentially either MS or type 1 diabetes, we have to train a person a lot differently from somebody who doesn't have those conditions. And what was happening is, especially in maybe a school setting or just a standard personal training garage gym setting, some of those like accommodations weren't happening, and that can kind of pose a potentially dangerous situation. So if you see somebody that says, I'm a personal trainer, what we're hoping for now is that the certifications actually match kind of an agreed upon level of competency, if you will, so that everybody has kind of this baseline knowledge of how to work with people. Whereas maybe 5 years ago, and even probably a year ago, maybe even currently, you would have people that have a personal training certification, but that doesn't mean anything. That means they can
Right.
answer a 20-question test and read a book. You and I both know that there's a big difference between that one and somebody with a more advanced certification.
Okay. That's good to know. I learned something today. I guess I didn't know the difference between all those different levels of certification and what it really meant to be a personal trainer. Let's just keep moving through this list of questions here. I know you paused when you said that you had begun work at Rejuve Medical, and that's where you and I kind of started to connect, and that's how I got to know you, other than just being Mr. Neubauer's brother
Yeah.
and Mrs. Neubauer's son, I guess. So if you could tell us about your professional experiences starting at Rejuve and then, up until what you're doing right now.
Yeah, absolutely. So my career has been a pretty a wild one because I think I bring that a little bit upon myself. I'm never really fulfilled by either doing the same thing every day or something that doesn't stimulate me or challenge me from just an intelligence or competency standpoint. So I got started at Rejuve. I basically got hired to fit a need that they had at the time. Again, I was poor. I was living with Mrs. Neubauer, and I had no job and no really good job prospects. So I said, well, I'm going to just search and see if there's any medical clinics that are looking for anything because I knew I wanted some medical experience. So Rejuve hired me to be my title was medical assistant, but even that is like probably disrespectful to medical assistants. My job was basically to just run around be the task guy. Like if a bed needed wiping, if a room needed turned over, it was just anything. And I found myself falling into the mindset of, I've got my bachelor's degree. I just went to school for 4 years. I've got my professional strength and conditioning certification, and here I am doing like work that is in no way, challenging or,
It
but
wasn't
that
really
was
using your kinesiology degree, I suppose.
exactly. Yep. That expensive piece of paper I had was not really showing its return on investment, if you will. So anyway, I did that for a couple of months and thought, okay, I'm going to stick this out and see, maybe if this is the job for now, maybe I'll just kind of keep my ear to the ground for what would be next. Well, the cool thing about Rejuve specifically, and there's starting to become more facilities like it, but Rejuve is a medical clinic that actually has a gym in it. And my desire at the time was, well, I want to get over and work in the gym too. Can I work from 8 to 5 in the clinic, and then from 5 to 8, can I train personal training clients? And I started to kind of rattle some cages and just kept asking around, like, hey, who do I talk to about working over there? And I eventually, caught up with my manager, with the general manager in the gym at the time. His name is Justin, which is relevant because his name will come up here in my career path again. But I said, Justin, I just want to train. And he said, okay. And I told him I had a certification, and he said, okay. He said, how do you feel about sales? And I said, well, sure, I'll do anything. So he said, okay, well, I think we could have you working in the clinic. I'll train you how to do sales, and then you can do personal training. You sign up your own clients. We'll pass you a few leads that we get through our marketing efforts, and we'll have you, kind of begin a career in sales. And at that point, my career, I excelled in sales to a point that I didn't even really expect. I didn't think I was going to enjoy it. I didn't think I was going to, I had this very traditional like mindset of sales. And if anybody listening can take one thing away from this, it's that a career in sales extends far and beyond just your traditional like snake oil guy that's selling knives door to door, or even, I don't want to throw shade on any sort of other potential sales job, but just, if you can expand on what you might think sales is, to actually being somebody that connects what they're looking for to what they need. So if you can imagine somebody that needs to lose a little bit of weight, they don't know what they need. So it was my job to prescribe to them or just recommend to them, this is what I think you need. And for me, it became easy to say, well, you need to lose 30 pounds. I can help you do that. And this is how much it costs. And I think people really enjoyed that, at least direct honesty. So I eventually, within Rejuve, I was asked actually to spend more of my time in sales because I was having some success with it. So eventually, I stopped working in the clinic. I became a fitness sales, consultant and a personal trainer, and I worked doing that for about a year. I would drive from Princeton to St. Cloud every day. I had clients from 5 a.m. until about 8:30, and then from 8:30 until about 4, I would work more sales on the phone, going to different networking events, all that stuff. And then from about 4:30 p.m. to about 7, I would work with clients, and I'd do that 4 days a week. So it was 4 pretty grueling, exhausting days. And then Fridays obviously was a lighter day, but that was a lot of time of just working on skills and all that fun stuff. But eventually, it was time even for a change. I was kind of getting burned out, ready to continue to work on more of the sales and learning more about business development and how a business runs. So I eventually became the sales and business development director at Rejuve, and spent more of my time, less of my time personal training and more of my time actually networking and doing community events and speaking, and talking about healthcare, fitness, nutrition, going out into the community and providing some sort of value that brought attention and people to the door of Rejuve, saying, hey, I saw Tanner's presentation. I really think I need what he was recommending as far as meal planning, or I really think that I need to be seen in the clinic for a medical evaluation and start improving my health. So that was a lot of fun. I love communicating. Just, I do enjoy public speaking, and trying to get better and better at it. But that was really enjoyable. And then, from there, I did that for about a year. And at that point, I was getting a little bit frustrated with the company I was with, and also working really, really hard at it. So I decided that I wanted to own my own business. And that's where I went off on my own. I bought into a gym. So currently I own a gym called Integration Fitness. And I just wanted to, I like fitness. I like the gym space. We do CrossFit and group training and all group-based classes. It's a cool community of just cool people that enjoy working out. So that's one component of what I do. And at the same time, I became a freelance marketing and sales consultant for medical clinics. And we at one point were consulting with, I believe we had 6 clinics that we were consulting with, and helping them basically connect their messages to people that need it. So that's, to me, that's what sales is. And that's my former boss, Justin, and I came together and we decided that we could do this. So we helped these medical clinics, again, just help them with their marketing initiatives, help them communicate, and help them basically bring patients to their doors. And these clinics are more health and wellness based clinics that we would coach like their employees on how to speak about health and wellness, speak about different procedures, and just how to take a different look at healthcare.
Okay.
So,
So that's where you're at right now? That's
yeah. So,
your current position?
yeah. So actually, one of the clinics that we were working with, and this was as recent as about 2 months ago, they lost. We were working a little bit more intensely with them, or intensively, and their office manager. They needed a little bit of organization. Their office manager left a little bit abruptly, and so they asked if I would come down and work with them. So I'm living here temporarily, but yeah, just kind of helping them run and clean up their operations a bit.
Okay. Just because I think this is on my mind, I'm going to fast forward through a couple of questions before we come back. But so I think a lot of the people we're going to talk to, and a lot of people I'm going to talk to, and our class is going to hear from, are the traditional frontline medical workers. So we're going to talk to a pediatrician and a couple of nurses, and I got somebody that works in the lab over at Fairview. So can you just kind of compare and contrast what you do? Because I certainly can see the connection on why you would come talk to a bunch of kids in a health careers class. Can you kind of compare what you're doing to what a traditional healthcare worker, or whatever that sense of the term would be?
Yeah.
To just kind of compare and contrast those two.
I love that question because just based on my experience, and you only know what you know and what you've been exposed to. So when I thought healthcare career, I knew I kind of wanted to work in health and fitness as I started to gravitate more towards that in college. I just, that was exactly what it was. Well, do I want to be a nurse? Do I want to be a nurse practitioner? Do I want to be a PA? Do I want to be a doctor? Do I want to be an LPN or a lab technician? And didn't even really connect the dots of, well, wait a minute, there's a whole other side of healthcare, meaning more the administrative side of healthcare that still requires a pretty significant knowledge of what goes on behind the scenes. So to give an idea of really what my day-to-day looks like, I still get to interact with our patients here. Still get to call and talk through, either resolve any sort of customer complaints, or just make sure that we've got coordinated care, meaning that when a patient comes and sees us in the clinic, oftentimes we'll make a recommendation for them to do some sort of procedure that we would do. So let's say somebody comes in and they need just to keep it simple, they need a back surgery. Well, we do those back surgeries, but we just do them off site at another surgery center. So between the recommendation from the physician to say, I'm recommending that you need a back surgery, to you're on the table having the back surgery, there's a lot of work that needs to be done in between that not everybody knows about. And that's where I come in. We've got a team here of 7 employees, and there's about 3 that are specifically dedicated to making sure that if you've been told you have a medication and that medication is going to this pharmacy, that medication gets to that pharmacy. If you've been told that you need a referral to physical therapy, that that referral or that phone call gets made on your behalf to that physical therapy clinic, and everything in between. So there's a lot of kind of, I guess, balls to juggle that also involve, me getting a chance to work with insurance companies. So let's say, a patient comes in for an office visit, or if you ever go into the doctor, and hey, this is covered by your insurance. Well, what does that mean for the clinic? And what does that mean for you? That's something that I'm actually growing in quite a bit, is understanding how that, like how we end up getting paid by your insurance company. And if we don't get paid, then, who's supposed to pay? So anyway, I guess, from a standpoint of just, there's so much more to healthcare that is actually very, very rewarding. I used to think that if I wasn't providing the care or doing it, that like a doctor provides care or just seeing patients in the office, that I wouldn't get the same like rewarding aspect of healthcare. There is no better feeling. I'll just say that, like, patient, that we were referring to that said needed back surgery, needed, let's just say, maybe three things from us in order to get approved by his insurance company for that back surgery. And they were three pretty extensive things, but the patient was, hurting. Um, on our list of things to do throughout the day, just knowing that, look, it might be a couple of weeks before we even get the approval for your, procedure. All it takes is for me to pick up the phone and spend maybe a dedicated hour to get those approvals done, so that, hey, Mr. Jones, which is a fake name, hey, Mr. Jones, good news, we got your procedure approved. We're going to have you in tomorrow. And just hearing kind of the joy out of his, through the phone, is just rewarding enough to make you want to work your tail off for anybody. So
Yeah. So something I really appreciate you, Tanner, is appreciate about you is your ability to adapt to change. And as I hear about your career path and your educational journey, we talked a lot, or not a lot. We've only had one day at class, really, but we've talked about change in general, especially with our specific or our current learning conditions. So I think you're a really good example for the kids who see this, and anybody else really who is able to take a situation and really make the best out of it and make it what you want it to be. Because I think I see a lot of kids in these career classes, especially our health careers class, that come in and they say, I want to be a doctor, I want to be a physical therapist, I want to be a nurse, somebody that they have experience with. But you're a great example of somebody who's found a lot of success, and it seems to be a pretty high sense of vocation and passion in what you're doing. So I think that's a really good example.
well, I appreciate that. And if there's if there's one thing that I've really kind of taken away from even just my journey, is, especially if I'm thinking back to what was my mindset in high school. And in high school, I was so like, okay, this is the education I need to do this. This is the education I need to do this. This is the education I need to do this. And even in college, I was actually that way. Um, and that might be kind of like just the result of how the landscape is. Because when you're in college, it's okay, well, what classes do I need to get this degree? And what degree do I need to get to do this job? Um, those to me are, when you get introduced to the real world, you'll start to find, the students watching will just start to find out where the education comes in is actually outside of the classroom, right? I can't remember who pinned that quote, but don't let school get in the way of your education, is the biggest thing. Because I learn something new every day. Sometimes I wake up with classic imposter syndrome of like, should I really be the one that's doing this, or am I really qualified to do this? And at a certain point, you just kind of got to go, you know what, what's reassuring to me is that the real world, the working world, needs people with, of course, technical skills. So you need to learn how to do, the requirements of a nurse. Like, let's say, if you need to learn how to draw blood. You need to learn how to, prescribe medications, and learn how certain medications interact with other medications. You have to know all that stuff. But to be honest, and as somebody who, I've hired two people over the last 2 weeks, and subsequently actually fired two people over the last 4 weeks, that were very technically good at what they do. The world needs people with soft skills, communication ability, people that can adapt to change, people that can get along interpersonally with people that are just different from others, people that the world needs that. And to be honest, we actually just hired somebody who has no medical experience. And we're going to have her run a department of our practice because she just shines in her ability to communicate, her attitude, the way that she takes initiative, the way that she just uses the resources available to her. It just the world needs that. So that's what's really, really encouraging to me on the other side of things compared to probably where your students might be at.
Yeah, well, you did just a tremendous job leading me into something that I know I wanted to ask.
Yeah.
Because a few years ago, this is number 3 on our list. I know I'm jumping around if you're following along here, but
Not even. Okay.
Princeton High School partnered with a bunch of community organizations. So there's some good business and industry in Princeton, Minnesota. So, for example, teachers went over to Fairview, and we went to Crystal Cabinets and the distillery. And there's some big business in Princeton, and what we asked those business partners to do is start to identify the skills that they want in future employees. And then, our goal as teachers is to try and recognize those skills and teach those skills implicitly and explicitly to kids. And obviously, it's a natural fit in this health careers class. So those 5 skills, and you definitely mentioned some of them, this is in no order, but communication and collaboration, teamwork, self-management, critical thinking, and accountability. So you've already touched on a couple of those, specifically communication and collaboration, but they're on the list. I don't expect you to memorize them, but if you could just talk a little bit more about those soft skills and how important they are, and especially if you're on the hiring and firing part of an operation, give us some perspective on some of those soft skills.
Yeah. So I'll start with just an example. We have and still is an employee for the time being, and I just want to clarify, I take absolutely no pride or enjoyment out of letting an employee go, and actually, I mean, outside of not really necessarily being the right fit for the right job, there were other reasons to get rid of this particular employee. So it's never a fun thing. I'm a train first and try to help redirect as much as possible. But I'll give one example that I know my brother Jordan, Mr. Neubauer, Mr. Neubauer, would say is a real world manifestation of this. So we do have an employee here currently that our jobs are complex and dynamic, especially in the administration world of healthcare. There's never a situation that is totally 100% by the book, or it seems very rare that ever happens. So we have certain protocols and procedures kind of in place for this is how we handled this situation. This is how we handled this situation. But I'll just say that, there is an employee here that, anytime, she kind of runs into a particular issue or she can't quite figure something out, it's she's walking into my office going, hey, I couldn't quite, I've got a question for you, or I've got a problem, but what I would like to see, and I'll be meeting with her tomorrow, but what I'd like to see is when you run into a problem, take 5 minutes and think about it, or, move on to the next one. Because the reality is she's coming to me with things that she could figure out if she kind of used a little bit of either creativity, problem solving, just overall general just sense and using the resources available to her.
It sounds like the 2 soft skills I would identify there are number 1, self-management, and number 2, critical thinking. I think in this situation, some training and some focus on those 2 things could go a long ways. And so, making the connection back to what we're doing here, if kids can start to develop those things right now, they're going to be at a way bigger advantage when they might be working for Tanner Neubauer.
Yeah.
And especially right now, if we're looking for positives coming out of this pandemic and distance learning, I don't know if there's a better way to learn than trial by fire when you're trying to do things like communicate with a teacher. You got to do that face to face if you can, but that's less likely now. Working with other people, self-management. Kids have to be extremely disciplined right now with all their distance learning stuff. I think about myself as a high school student. This would have been really hard for me because I'm a social person by nature. I want to be around people. I want to ask a lot of questions, and so distance
Right.
learning would have been an obstacle for me.
Absolutely. Yeah. And the biggest thing that to kind of equate that to that I'm learning out of that situation. So it's easy for me to say, like, I really want this particular employee, let's just call her, Michelle. I really want that employee to sit and think through what, if she was able to. But the reality is, if I keep myself in check here, because I think there's one of the many things this world needs right now is an understanding of individual perspectives. So if I put myself in Michelle's shoes and I realize who was in this chair prior to me, it was a very, 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 it was somebody who didn't necessarily promote independent thinking. Okay, a micromanager, if you will, somebody that said, no, that's not how we do things here. Somebody that says, no, and that's not me. And really, so my responsibility in Michelle's case, this is why I prefer training, is to say, hey, Michelle, look, you have the autonomy to, or just the authority to make a decision. You have the authority to, think through something, and God forbid you make a mistake. That's okay. you know, be okay with making mistakes. I give you that full permission. Just do it with authority and then own up to it if you make a mistake. And just know that we're not a culture. We shouldn't promote a culture of just, somebody who makes a mistake is, going to get shunned for it or fired for it or, punished for it. So yeah, absolutely. I don't want, I remember even myself in school, I kind of had to teach myself not to do this, but I'd be sitting doing a math problem. And then when I'd get stuck, I wouldn't even look up. It just, boom, my hand would go up. And the reality is, if I just sat on it and just thought through it and kind of worked through kind of some of the different problems that could come, I would have been in much better shape and able to solve the problem for myself anyway. So I would encourage students to feel comfortable making mistakes, knowing that really, you may think grades matter a ton, but if you make a mistake, and it somehow impacts your grade, you'll probably end up learning more and it'll benefit you more. I
Yeah.
promise.
So we've had some pretty deep conversation here. I don't think this next question is going to have as much depth to it,
That's
but
okay.
I think it's definitely worth asking. If you thought about yourself as a high schooler or even a middle schooler, what was your dream job? Because I don't want to speak for you, but maybe a healthcare administrator wasn't on that list.
It was not. No.
So what was your dream job?
At the time, so Mr. Baxter is still working at the high school, right?
Yep,
Um,
absolutely.
it was his first year was my freshman year, and I thought he was. And don't tell him I said this. You can if you want to. I thought he was the funniest guy. I thought he was so cool. I thought he must make a boatload of money because he drives a Ford Mustang. At the time, he did. And I just thought, like, what a cool job. So honestly, in high school, I wanted to be a high school band director. I wanted to be just like Mr. Baxter and just like have
I might be having lunch with him in like 15 minutes here, so I'll make sure to hold that off. I don't know if he's still driving a Mustang, but
yeah, right. Ask him. Tell him I say hello, but you can absolutely feel free to share that with them because actually in college, this is why, um, I remember in college, I was having this crisis of identity, thinking that somehow my career and job, I like equaled my identity, which is not the case. Um, I I remember like emailing him late at night, and this was actually when he was first getting deployed into the National Guard, and so he responded to me at like 2:30 in the morning, and he typed out this really thoughtful, nice response. Don't tell him this. You can tell him I made fun of him, but he typed out this really nice, thoughtful response that actually meant the world to me. And so here I am sitting thinking, at the time it was cool because like, hey, my high school teacher emailed me back. But now, if I think about it, and knowing that, I'm a busy professional that Sometimes I don't get back to my mom as quickly as I should, but knowing that my high school teacher took the time when he's, out in basic training for National Guard service to respond to me on a career question that he probably is thinking to himself, like, hey, look, you're going to be fine. Just give it time. You'll decide what you need to do. Was really cool. So,
Yeah, that is really cool.
yeah.
So just a couple more questions to wrap things up here. So this is again a really typical job interview question, but where do you see yourself like in 1 year, 5 years, 10 years? And I almost didn't put that question on here because I kind of hate that question.
Yeah.
But I think I'm curious.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. So, it's interesting. I really enjoy, and again, what I seek in a job or just in a day to day is just something that's challenging that I've either never done before or just, kind of want to just sink my teeth in and figure out how it works. So I really, in this particular instance, this job, this kind of relocation effort has been a lot of, all right, let's peel back the business and let's peel back like the healthcare, let's peel back the everything and try to find some of the problems. And number one, like anybody can stand from the outside and go, okay, I think I know what's wrong there. I think I know what's wrong here when you're looking at a business. So, Catalyst Pain Management Restorative Treatment Center is something that has plenty of problems, like every business has plenty of problems. Um, but anybody can sit on the sidelines and be what I like to call the Monday morning quarterback and say, Kirk Cousins shouldn't have thrown that pass on 4th and 1, trying to hit, who like the 4th string receiver, and probably should have checked down or done something. Anybody can sit and do that. And to me, that's not helpful. So I like solving problems. I like kind of getting into the inner workings and gaining a perspective of maybe why that problem exists. And so to me, that's kind of going to lead me down a career of just either like a business consultant, I'd like to eventually be at a point where I can just help either young entrepreneurs or help people avoid making some very similar or common mistakes that I've seen done. So where do I see myself in 1 year, 5 years, 10 years? In 1 year, I would hopefully be back in Minnesota because I love Missouri. I like it back there. I don't love it. I like it. I miss Minnesota. Minnesota's great.
The lakes are a lot better here, I'll bet.
Yeah, they sure are. And I would like to either work and do stuff like this. Honestly, when you reached out, I was first of all honored and humbled, but just I don't know. I think if there's a purpose for me, it's helping young people because I remember that part of my life so vividly in being partly miserable. Like when I was in high school and college, I was miserable because I just felt like I needed to know what I was going to do with my life. And I've just learned that, look, the reality is you don't. You don't
Yeah,
need to know.
and you know what? That's why I think you're such a great first person for us to talk to because those soft skills that we're trying to teach kids, I think you've got them. You didn't necessarily have a direction when you went to Madison. You didn't necessarily have a direction when you left Madison, but things worked out for you. You found out what you like doing, who you like being around, and that's what you've turned into your career. And I think that's awesome. I think that's the way I would tell all kids to do it, even though there's probably some uncomfortability that comes with that because it's not necessarily, go to school, get a degree, get a job in that degree. Like, sometimes degrees come with job titles, meaning like if I get a teaching degree, I'm going to be a teacher, right? So if you'll go get a nursing degree, you don't necessarily have to end up being a nurse. We've talked to a lot of nurses that are doing something that isn't, coming in and reading charts and taking temperatures and doing that traditional nursing stuff. So,
I actually, on that note, I have a meeting with a nurse actually later today who actually represents a product that we use in clinic quite a bit. So they are kind of a combination nurse, but sales, but they are coming in to consult with our providers to tell us how to do something. So not necessarily practicing one-on-one with patients, but this guy's got an RN degree, very smart, and he's helping us help others. So there's so
yeah.
many, that's what I love about this. There's so many different ways to go with that.
So if I can just keep kids open-minded a little bit and try to have as much experience as possible, the richest people aren't necessarily the ones with the most money. They're the ones with the most experiences. So I think that's really important for a high school kid to try and figure out right now. Okay, last question, and then I think we'll finish with one chat pack question, just because I think it's kind of fun. But if you could give yourself as a high schooler some career and educational advice, what would you say? And I know you've kind of touched on this a little bit, but 17-year-old Tanner Neubauer is sitting in health careers class. What would he need to hear?
Yeah. Let's see. There's a lot of different ones. So I want to try to condense this to a shorter answer, and let them hopefully kind of draw their own conclusions from this. So I'm going to say maybe two things that might turn into three things. Dr. Batoil, who owns the clinic, I'll tell her, hey, I got two things for you, which end up turning into 10 things. So she says, is this a 10 or two? And I say, yeah, it probably is. But number one is really, I would say focus less on what you want to be and focus more on who you want to be. And once you can kind of answer that question, which is way easier said than done, just remember that like your answer today is going to be probably different from the answer tomorrow, probably different from the answer the next day. I'm a big believer in that. Like, I don't ever like taking definitive actions, meaning like I'm never doing this again, or I'm never going to be this. I'm never. I don't even like those statements. So if you can wake up every day and ask yourself, okay, who do I want to be today, rather than what I want to be, because if you think of like a high school kid, what are you? Well, you're a high school kid, and then you act like a high school kid, and then you do dumb things because high school kids do dumb things. But no, that's just a joke. But really focus more on who, develop yourself, and then the what will kind of figure itself out. The other thing, if I was in high school right now, I would just try to um, expose yourself to as many things as possible. One of the things that I like, for some reason, this stuck with me. Katie Couric, who maybe the high school kids don't know. Katie Couric was the speaker at my college graduation, and her advice was one that I eventually heeded. I like her message at my college commencement. I eventually like played out in real life in my in my professional career. She said, when you're kind of getting ready to enter the job market, or thinking about the job market or whatever it is, and she goes, that first job, don't focus so much on your ideal, like dreamed of job. Just take a job. It may not be your favorite job. It may not be what you feel like you're like. You may feel super overqualified for it, but just take a job. And then from there, know that that's not your definitive status. Like for me, I knew that I had bigger things than wiping exam tables. I would do medical all day. I knew that, not that that's not a big thing. That's a very important thing. But that was the job that led to other jobs, that led to other jobs, that led to other jobs. If, people that are listening remember, I was taking the job thinking I wanted to go back to school to become a physical therapist. Well, the reality is that Rejuve job propelled my career to where it's at now. If I wouldn't have taken that job and would have taken this, research position out at Penn State University, which, I went out and interviewed for, and was a competing offer, I'd probably be in a very different place right now. So I'm just thankful that I was open to just taking a job and letting that sometimes, expose me to enough to get me to where I'm at now.
Yeah. That's great stuff, Tanner. I kind of wanted to finish around noon today, and I've got 11:53 on my computer here. So
Perfect.
I think one chat pack question from the middle of the deck, and
All right.
we can wrap things up here.
I kind of want to ask you some questions, some career questions, Mr. J.
Well, I feel like I should respond a little bit to what you said about, taking a job, because I have a pretty darn relatable experience.
Mm-hmm.
When I finished my student teaching, I was in the metro at Chaska and Chanhassen, and Princeton High School came calling. They were the last job interview I had. It wasn't Princeton High School, actually. It was Princeton Middle School, but it was the last job interview I did in the middle of August, and I had this plan to go to MSU and get another degree. And I said, you know what, if things don't work out in Princeton, I don't even really know where that is. It's not a big deal. But sure enough, Mr. Voce at the middle school said, we want to hire you. And he took a chance on a guy with no teaching experience, and one thing led to another. And honestly, I can honestly say I wouldn't rather be anywhere else right now. I'm awfully thankful for the opportunities that Princeton High School has provided me. And so, I would definitely agree with that advice to take a job, take a chance, take a little bit of a healthy risk. I couldn't have found Princeton on a map before I came here and moved. And now, I've got a whole bunch of Tiger gear in my closet that I really enjoy wearing because I'm proud of it.
You're I was absolutely thrilled to hear that you're coming back there, Mr. J. Pox, and just simply because I think Princeton has such high quality teachers, and you excel even above high quality. I love the way like you I don't know, you invest in thinking outside the box. And I still remember this, like to this day, like when we were meeting talking about a strength and conditioning program for the Princeton girls basketball team. And you just said, look, I mean, we just need something different. We need to think like what can we do differently that will get us to a different place. And that to me like is such elite thinking, to use a PJ Fleck term, like that is what I hope continues to define Princeton education and Princeton teachers, because I love Princeton High School with all my heart, and I'm just so glad that you're back.
Yeah, me too. I'll tell you more about my journey back here some other time, but we would be here for another hour, I think, if I started to get into that. So here's the last chat pack question. It says, if, like the newspaper or milk, I don't know why milk is on the list, but if you could have something of your choice delivered to your doorstep every morning, what item would you want to have delivered?
Oh man, I know you'd be right there with me. I want a piping hot cup of black coffee right here, because if there's one thing like and even kind of being in a stage of like relocation, I'm living at my boss's, so the owner of the clinic's parents' lake house, so it's kind of this transient fluid situation, where I don't even have a travel mug, Mr. Jacob. So like when I'm ready to go, I'm out the door, and I've since told myself I can't just take a mug of coffee, in the car, because I spill it all over myself, right? I need a travel mug. I don't even have one. But man, that would be my thing.
Well, I guess.
What about yours?
Well, a cup of coffee is definitely up there, but if I could have it would be a high quality breakfast. Like breakfast is my favorite meal of the day, but for some reason, breakfast made by somebody else is just a little bit better.
My favorite eggs are the ones that somebody else makes for me.
Yeah, so if somebody from K-Bob could deliver me a farmhouse breakfast every morning on a platter, and I just walk out and eat it, that'd be living.
K-Bob's special frittata. That would be amazing.
But I guess my solution for the cup of coffee thing is you just get yourself a programmable coffee pot. I don't know. I got
yeah. What's funny about that is that would seem so easy. When it's the end of the night and I'm like ready for bed, even like it's painful enough to get me to get up and like even just brush my teeth. Like the fact that I do that is like incredible enough to think about programming a coffee pot, because I know the countdown is on before I fall asleep. So then in the morning it's okay, programmable coffee pot, whatever. I just want somebody to bring it to me.
Yeah. All
Yeah.
right. Well, thanks a lot, Tanner. I really appreciate your time, and I hope things are going well for you down in St. Louis. And until next time, I guess.
Until next time,
Go Tigers.
go Tigers. Thanks, Mr. Jacobs.